Today we're
Uh,
talking about energy, and so I'm Kylie Stone. I'm the host of The Uncharted Leader. I'm also a coach and the host of a 28-day wellbeing challenge. So today I wanted to talk about energy because number one, often I find, certainly for myself, but a lot of people talk about wanting to have more energy. You know, they feel like they don't have enough. They're looking for more motivation or feeling like they don't have enough energy to do the things that are really important to them. You know, and I'm often asked by people, you know, how is it that well-being or health, you know, am I a health coach? Do I, you know, is that my field? And it's not. And so I'm often asked, what has that got to do with leadership and my work with entrepreneurs and business owners? Because that's ultimately where I do work, is around with entrepreneurs in leadership and having them advance as leaders. Then I just want to very simply explain the relationship between the two. And then I do want to introduce a guest that I've got who is a real expert in the area of energy. So the relationship is simple as this. If you don't have the energy and the health to support you to do the things that you need to get done in a day, and let's be honest, these days there is a lot. You know, we're juggling big demanding jobs. Technology has made things, you know, so fast that we're on all the time. And then you're going to add things like, you know, kids and the economy, and even right now it's even more difficult because we're facing this global pandemic, and that has an impact beyond our own personal space. So quite when you look at the foundation of our life, their health really sits at the bottom. And if we don't have the good health and a good level of energy in who we are and in our body physically and mentally, then it makes it impossible to really succeed and achieve the things we really want in life. So that's really as simple as it is. But today, you know, it's been a 3 to 4 year journey specifically for me to work on my health and specifically give me the energy that I need to do all the things that I do. And, you know, on the one hand, I could have just said, you know what's the point? You know, just be satisfied with having a job and taking care of kids, and that's enough. But, you know, that just doesn't cut it personally for me. So even just taking care of 3 kids who are only 3 years apart, it takes something to take care of my health. And, you know, I'll be really honest, it has taken me a bit of time to master what it is to take care of, you know, what I put in my body, what I do from a nourishment point of view and nutrition, but also what I do to exercise and to rest. And when I started on that journey, partway through that, I'd been seeing a number of, you know, I've been seeing a naturopath, a herbalist, a nutritionist, acupuncture, I mean, you name it, I was doing it, all because I had got diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. But it was towards the end of 2017, specifically, I got in contact. Well, actually, my dear friend Campbell reached out to me, and, you know, very passionate, has been working in the area of health and fitness for a long time. And, you know, Campbell's been working with me on some projects in the media space. He's been an executive producer and extraordinarily successful in that space and in some of the documentaries and work he's produced. And, you know, but he's also a yoga teacher, and he's passionate about keto. And he'd been talking to me about keto for a long time. And as having been a personal trainer in my past, I knew it was to do with something around burning fat in the body. But all of a sudden, people were talking about keto diets. And I'm like, what are you on about? So given that we're about to launch, you know, we've got our next wellbeing challenge starting on Monday, 6th of July, I just really wanted to invite Campbell in to talk to me specifically about more about what this really means for people. Because, you know, as somebody who does have 3 kids and does what I do, it would not be possible if it wasn't for the amount of time or effort I've put into my health. And so rather than talk about it specifically from my perspective, because I'm not the expert, I've decided to invite Campbell in. So Campbell, thanks for joining me.
oh, thank you, Kylie. It's wonderful to be here with you.
And on a Friday afternoon, I'm proud to say, look at this green juice.
Very well.
It's not wine, which is what it used to be on a Friday afternoon.
Very good.
So you do a lot in the area of health, Campbell. So let's just go straight to that. I think you started to mention to me, you know, you run things like detox retreats. So let's just start talking openly about what it is you're passionate about and what you are doing in that space.
Fantastic. Yeah, look, my journey's taken quite a step since I was a teenager. I had some conditions of, I think, you know, in candida imbalance, which I find, you know, early days, people were dealing with a lot. And I was a young teenager, and I went on some strict diets with that. And so that started my journey with health and following a natural path. And along the way, I picked up yoga and the philosophies of yoga. And that brought me into a whole nother space of Ayurveda, which is also another principle around health and living with the environment in a native or in a cohabitive way. And along the path, I, like yourself, have tried and looked at many different modalities of health. And I've found that there's not one size fits all for anybody, but there's some tricks and some tips that can really support people on the journey if they can just take a moment to tune in for themselves. So I took a path of keto about 4 years ago, and I found it really beneficial for my health. And you're talking about energy. I like to talk about vitality, actually. I think energy has, can go lots of different ways, but vitality is something that we're all striving to have in our day to be able to maintain the activities that we want to focus on. And then what really was important, I came across it thinking, oh, this was a fat loss thing, and I don't really have a lot of fat to lose and never have. And
No, you don't.
but what I also discovered was that it's an incredible fuel source. And
Right.
and the level of clarity and my mental clarity, those things really lit me up. And when I explored it for myself, tested it out for myself, I realized that it's actually not an easy process. Being on the diet, as you mentioned before, was quite a challenge. And to be honest, it didn't actually serve me all the time. I actually like to keep a fairly balanced lifestyle. And,
Mm.
if I didn't have to sort of restrict my diet, then I would prefer not to. But what I found was also the supplements, which then really took my interest, because they basically provided what they call ketones, and I didn't have to be as strict with the diet. But when I coupled the concepts together, had some really profound impacts.
Okay, well, let's just talk about a few things, because especially for those who are not familiar with a lot of the things that we're talking about, I want to talk. Firstly, let's define what you mean by fuel, because you did reference fuel, and I know that when we talk about diet, that we know that what we put into our body, it's a bit like a car. We put petrol in a car, and with our personal body, we put food into our body. But honestly, you could talk about a lot of food that you could put in your body as fuel. When you say fuel, what did that mean for you?
Look, it's so true. And the analogy of the car is a great one, because there's many different things that happen with a car that we need to focus on. And our body is similar. It's like a vehicle that carries us around. And, we need a certain maintenance. So yoga and all of the tools that we use for that. But fuel, what you put into it, is really vital. And to an effect, like you can get away with dodgy fuel, but over time, what happens is, basically toxins build up. If you're talking about the body, toxins build up in the body, and they start basically breaking it down. It's like a residue that forms in the system. The big problem is sugar, to be honest.
Yeah.
It pretty much wears everything down. It's like putting a high-end toxicity fuel into your car, and it just literally eats things away. So what happens with sugar is that even though we get a quick fix from sugar, and we're talking fuel now, there's primary two fuel sources for the body, and one is glucose and the other one is ketones. We have pretty much saturated ourselves with glucose. We pretty much eat 24/7. Carbohydrates is a predominant food source that we have, and rightfully it gives us a quick boost, and we get satisfied really quickly from eating that. The problem is that it's just like throwing kindling onto a fire. You get a quick flame, but it burns out. So you got to throw some more on, a quick flame, and then it burns out. This is the yo-yo effect that we deal with every day. And that can be really problematic especially if you're looking at the environment that we're living in with other stresses. You crash. And so the fuel source that is created through the process of ketosis is ketones. And ketones are produced in the liver, and they are breaking down the fats in our body. And when we didn't have food 24/7, couldn't just go to the shops and buy it. We had to go and forage for it. The body had the process, and still does, of storing fats for when we need to break them down and use them for a fuel source. It's a very efficient way of working, and we've kind of disrupted that whole process by just having food at hand 24/7. The process in which we can actually start accessing that for ourselves is to stop the intake of so much carbohydrates, start burning off, doing more physical activity. And I like to also work with intermittent fasting, so actually not eating for periods during the day. And this is similar to how we would be back in ancient times. We wouldn't eat all the time. We'd actually wake up. We wouldn't have food ready to go in the morning. We'd probably wait until midday before we caught something or found something. So all that period in the morning, the body's doing all its natural processes. And part of that is breaking down the fats and turning them into ketones. And what the ketones do, they're like a super efficient fuel source. And when you get into the state of ketosis, you just can't believe that you haven't felt that way before. So you might find that you've been on a diet or like a restriction before. You've been on juice fast or something like that. And we teach this in the detox retreat, that the first couple of days is the body reprocessing itself. And so a lot of toxins will come out of the fats as well. So you'll feel a bit groggy for a couple of days. But then once all that sediment, all of the stuff that's been clagged in there starts dispersing, you get the clarity of mind, you get a real sense of vitality, and you really just don't feel that same level of hunger that you do when you're just constantly throwing the kindling on the fire with the glucose. And the analogy, if you look at the fire, it's like throwing on a big log or a piece of coal when you get into ketosis, because that is a slow burn. It gives you a sustained energy over time. You don't have the need to throw another log on the fire. You basically can get all the energy which you're talking about. If you look at the fire, there's lots of heat that's generated from that. You can get the same energy from building and getting yourself in the state of ketosis. So it's very powerful, and there's so much to it. There's a lot of science behind it, but realistically, it comes back to very simple techniques that you can do.
So I just want to capture, I think, the summary of what we were just talking about. The body, we're talking about fuel and giving the body the kind of fuel that it needs to have the energy that we ultimately are looking for. And your description for yourself of the experience of what that looks like is that you experience vitality. And so what you're saying is there's two forms, primarily glucose or ketones. And as human beings, what we're currently conditioned based on our existing diets is predominantly carbohydrates, and that's where we're getting most of our glucose and the breakdown of those foods. And of course, when we have those things that continually put spikes into our body and up and down and up and down, and that's the one option. The other option you're saying to give us fuel is ketones, and that actually how you can access or get more ketones in your body, that happens in a number of different ways, right? So I think you said, if I correct, then correct me if I'm wrong, you referred to things like intermittent fasting does that. You said the restriction of certain carbohydrates does that, which I'm assuming is going to be sugar-loaded carbohydrates, not your fibrous vegetable carbohydrates, although there's a capacity on that. And then I think the final thing you said, I know you did mention there's also exogenous, well, you didn't use the word exogenous, but I think supplements of ketones, especially if you don't like to minimize, I think you said you don't like to go without food, you like to eat a lot of food, so you can also get supplements that help with that. So in a nutshell, is that what we're talking about? We're really just talking about making sure there's two different fuel sources, is that right?
Yeah, look, I mean, you mentioned the exogenous ketones, and what they are is pretty much just like a supplement that you can have throughout the day that give you a similar effect. I like to talk about it like reverse engineering the process. So rather than having to go out and do really strenuous physical exercise, restrict your calorie intake, especially the glucose and carbohydrates, then you to produce the ketones. You put the ketones in the body says, thank you very much, I've got that as a primary fuel source now. I don't really feel like having the sugar. And this is the
Right.
effect that I found when I had the supplement, is that I just didn't feel like the sugar.
Yeah.
And that really, really like was a surprise for me. I had a block of chocolate in the fridge that stayed there for a month, and I didn't realize until I looked back in the fridge, like, I haven't had that 3 p.m. piece of chocolate that I would normally have. And so that was a real surprise for me. And
Yeah.
the other aspect, which, I mean, it's all about balance, but you want to increase your fat intake. And as counterproductive as that actually sounds, when you talk
Mm.
about fats, we're talking about the good fats. So things like avocados, coconut oils, nuts, seeds, all the good oils as well. So when you increase those in your diet, then they actually satiate the brain much better. And
Yeah.
if you take some of the calories out, so you restrict your intake in terms of how much. I think the intermittent fasting really is where the key is. When you take that period of time where you just don't consume anything, having a
Mm.
bit of water is fine. I even have a black coffee, or sometimes I'll add some. They 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 termed it a bullet coffee, and I've been having those recently again, and I love them. You put in some MCT oil, which is medium chain triglyceride oil, which is basically a constitute of the coconut oil,
Mm.
some good butter or ghee, and
Mm.
or some coconut oil as well, and you put that into your black coffee. Give it a blend. So you could put a blender, and that pretty much starts my day. And the fats in that is a slower release of the caffeine, and then the
Right.
fats also feed the brain, so I don't feel like I'm as hungry until that can last me sometimes till 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I have so
Yeah.
much energy. I feel like my
Yeah.
thoughts are
Well,
really clear.
I think, yeah. So I just on the intermittent fasting thing, I think well, I just want to go back to actually what you said right at the beginning, where you
Mm,
said that the thing that it's important to you is that everybody's body's very different,
yes.
in terms of where they're at, what allergies they've got, whether you've got an autoimmune condition. I mean, I think
Mm,
that's one thing that's I would say to anybody, especially when because let's just be honest with a couple of things, right? Firstly, we all know that there's a certain kind of food that's not good for us, right? And
yeah.
we all know that certain sugars and processed foods are no good for us. So let's just get that flat. There's no argument about that whatsoever. When it comes to what you decide to do to take care of your health, firstly, what I would say is it's unpredictable where you are at on your journey for us. And so we as a human society, right, when we think of a great fad, let's just, we go, oh, let's go do that because we want to lose weight or we want to look fantastic. And while
Yeah.
all that's really great, and I'm the first to say, hey, if you want to take care of your health to look fantastic, there's nothing wrong with that. Please be honest about that. But let's just say one thing about that. Do not go out and do anything without doing your own homework for yourself, because the last thing and that was one of the big lessons for me too, Campbell, when we started this. And like
Mm,
like I was, oh my God, you're trying to tell me to get off these certain foods. And that was really struggle. I loved to having my Turkish toast in the morning.
for
But
sure.
funny enough, when I started, I did start taking some of those exogenous ketones, and I think it was about day 5. I went, oh my God, I haven't had I didn't have those 5 days in a row. I was like, this is a
Yeah.
miracle.
Yeah.
Um,
Fantastic.
but the thing that you did recommend to me at the time, and I did go and do my own research, was I read a book called the Ketogenic Bible, I think
Yes.
it was,
Yeah.
which was really heavy on the research. And I think hormonally there's different conditions for women and men and all that kind of stuff. And so you really got to do your homework about, your body type and what's, relevant to you if you're going to go on this journey. Has that been your experience?
Oh, 100%. And not only that, I'll add to that is having a team. I've got a team of people, of health practitioners that I get advice from, and it's important that you actually you find some people that can support you on your journey as well. And we can't do this by ourselves. I think no one, if you look at any high-end person that is either, you know, in the speaking platform or in the athletic platform or any in the music, they've got a team of people that support them. And it doesn't need, you don't need to have like, you know, personal trainers and all those sort of things, but having some health practitioners that you can go and discuss these things with, having, you know, other people that have had personal experience with the different approaches that you're looking at, they're key, because there's a lot of research, and you know, there's a lot of conflicting information, and
I'm glad you said that, actually, because you know, once you go on good old Google, you can find just as much positive about one thing as you can about the negative, right?
Absolutely. So that's really important that you find people that you align with, that support you, that you can then get good advice from, and asking questions, doing your own research on yourself, so testing things out. But coming back to common sense, really, it is about common sense, and then taking note for yourself. And it's tricky times. And we were talking about energy, and when you're not feeling high in energy, then some of these things can feel like a burden. But just starting somewhere is the key. I think really importantly is movement, and
Right.
and whole food, simple diet. If we just cut out simple things, like if you just cut out sugar, if you cut out the processed foods, and you just start from there, and you just get out and you move every day, that's going to be taking it to the next step. It's going to be the first thing to get momentum, because like anything, it's the hardest part. It's just getting the momentum. Once you've got momentum, then you'll start feeling the vitality for yourself. Then you'll start gravitating towards maybe going and doing a yoga class, or going and doing a fitness class, or going and walk with a friend, or finding another activity that then again elevates your level of vitality. And then it's like the next step, you build upon the next step. And I think that's the key, rather than trying to just blow everything into one stratosphere and then have the big fall on the other side, and oh, I failed, you know,
Yes.
and stabbing
Yes.
yourself. It's really
Yes.
important. Take the steps in incremental levels, and take the notes, journal, and then find what works for you. And I think that's going to be the key for everybody, because it's not a one size fits all. And
Yes.
your body type is different to my body type. And I tell this
Yes.
to people over and over again, especially on our retreats, because what we find is that there's going to be a different time lag. What your body is going to do and what my body is going to do is completely different. It's like if you
Yes.
consider alcohol, I'll have 2 drinks, you have 2 drinks. The effect is going to be different.
You're
And
partying
so
and I'm wiped out on the couch.
hardly. So, you know, it's same with this. And keto is just one aspect. It's not the
Yeah.
complete aspect. It's really having a whole system around you. And nothing is, I don't like committing to one thing forever. It's really finding these are tools that we can put into our tool belt that we can apply when the time is right. And I think, like anything, if you go for a period of time, give yourself some relief and relax around, you know, what you do in terms of what you eat and how you behave, because life is for living, and we don't want to be in this jail sentence for ourselves of like, you know, strict diets and strict lifestyle. And,
Yeah.
you know, when we find the balance in all of that, it's just so much of a joy. And when you feel the vitality for yourself, and you feel that clarity of thought, you can't go back. It really feels like
Yes.
you've taken that leap into the other side where you can really feel the difference. So that's my advice is, yeah, step incrementally, and
Yes.
enjoy the ride.
Yeah, look, I really like that. In fact, you remind me of that quote. I think it's one of the Buddhist quotes about that, you know, 1,000-mile journey starts with one step. And I think
Absolutely.
often we find that we've got to try and do everything. And, especially when you get a level of motivation, you know, like if you weigh yourself on the scales and you go, oh, God, I've got to do something. And you go do something. And then you go, I'm going to quit coffee. Oh, I'm going to quit coffee. I'm going to quit alcohol. Oh, I'm going to eat no sugar, no and I'm going to cut all of that out. Oh, and I'm going to
Oh,
go to the gym, and I'm going to go to the gym every single day. And, you know, like, because all of a sudden you're highly motivated, and then you go, I'm going to
yes.
do everything. And then
Yeah.
boom, by day 4, you're like, I'm so fucking, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
so over this, you know, and if
Yeah.
anything, I think out of doing this now for the last 3 years. So we've, been running these 30-day, well, the 28 days, right, 4-week cycle now
Brilliant.
for 2.5 years, and I kid you not, if there's the thing that's consistent every single time, those who win and those who get stuck, the difference is just focusing on, one thing at a time instead of trying to do everything. So I
Mm.
really do love that you've said that. Listen, the other thing I want to point out here is the other part we talked about. I do think, we it's as if when we want to take care of our health, we think there's a solution, a one size fits all approach. So
Mm.
often I've had people come to these challenges, for example, think, oh, what's the plan? What's the meal plan? Oh,
Mm.
what's the program? And I'm like,
Yeah.
guess what? We don't have one for you. And that's really, honestly, that freaks
Mm.
people out.
Yeah.
People come in here thinking I'm just going to give them a script to tell them what to do.
Mm.
And, of course, we provide a lot of resources and guidelines and stuff. But
Mm.
listen, I just found that so the first week that we spend the whole week actually not telling people to do anything except
Mm.
for, let's just start with clarifying why you're here, what are you trying to achieve, what's your
Mm.
baseline, and it's not until we go through those things that we finally say to them, now let's find a way of how you want to achieve that. Let's take a look at what are your options. If you want to look at dietary requirements, let's take a look at what that could look like and what would work for you. Okay. Now let's take a
Mm.
look at the area of movement and what might that look like for you. But we don't really get, and by the way, even when we get to that point, Campbell, I don't say to people, this is what you should do. There's only one rule I have. I do
Mm.
ask people to take sugar and alcohol out. I
Mm.
think that's
It's
probably
great
for
advice.
28 days. If you can just start with that, that's
Mm.
probably a good start.
100%. Look, this is really key. The 28-day challenge is a fantastic kick, and that building momentum. I think looking at anything in that short term is crazy. We're so used to these diet scenarios and putting things into time frames. It's about developing a lifestyle. And what I love to teach and what I do is self-reliance and self-awareness and self-empowerment. And what we're doing with that in this process is what I love. You're not giving people a script to follow. You're giving people the power back to be in charge of their own life and take
Yes.
responsibility for their own life, which is so much better. It's like that story of, you can feed a man fish, but if you teach him how to fish, then you're going to give him so much more for the rest of his life. So it's the
Yeah,
same thing
so
here.
great.
Let's just give people the constructs, the tools, and then here, go work with these tools, try them out for yourself and see what works for you, and empower your own ability to heal yourself and empower
Yeah.
yourself and to bring back your vitality yourself, rather than throwing out the responsibility tag to somebody else and waiting for them to fix it for you. Ain't gonna happen.
Oh, I know, right? And, it's ironic because it actually took me realizing that I was giving my power away to the source, to somebody else, and it wasn't until I realized that that was the problem that I actually started getting the results. Even
Yeah.
doing a course, many times I'd go and do a personal development program and, I'd go, oh my God, the leader was so amazing. And oh my goodness, the most amazing content. There's nothing else out there like it. And of course, not realizing at the time that what actually was going on was I was giving away all the power to the source as though it was the leader or it was the content itself,
Yeah.
instead of recognizing that it was over here, it was everything that I was doing for myself, how I
Mm.
was taking action, how I was doing the thinking, and how I was looking at my own behavior and then taking the action that actually was the thing that got me the results. And
Mm.
Campbell, it was the same with me for nutrition and energy and having vitality. Like at the end of the day, I'm the one that's in my own household doing at the
Yeah.
time of looking at that fridge and going, what am I going to do here? Well, that meal plan that's on my email inbox about what I should be doing, it's
Mm.
not knowing that I've got that's going to give me power. It's actually, what am I doing in the moment of being confronted by what I really want, and what am I going to do to deal with that?
Look, this is such a science. It's such a level of self-development. We are programmed to do things from dot, and we are in this process starting to challenge those belief systems and break things down. So this isn't just about changing what you do in terms of your food and your exercise. This is looking at and reflecting on who you are and how you show up in the world. And like anything, if you do it one way in one area, you're going to do it the same in this area. So it's a
Okay, now can I cut
holistic.
you off on that one? Can I be
Yeah,
really rude and cut you off on that one? Because this is
got
what
it.
I'd love to finish. I actually really want to finish on this one because
Got it.
what you've just put reference to is how we treat our health, and I'll just
mm,
say it that way. The
mm,
way that we show up, the way we behave, the actions we take, the actions we don't take in regards to our health is
mm.
actually how we're showing up in life. Now, firstly, am I capturing what you're saying? And if I am,
Yep.
can we just talk about that for a second? Because ultimately, as I said to you at the beginning of this, one of the reasons I want people to take better care of their health is because if they can take care of that there, imagine what they're then able to do in all these other areas of their life.
Yes, well,
And
this
you
is
talk
it.
about cognitive function, right?
Well, this is it. We're not doing this. I mean, sometimes you mentioned it at the start, we want to look good. We want to feel good in our body. What does that mean? That means that we want to show up in the world in a way that we're positive and we're feeling good about life. That means that we can show up positive for our children. That means that we can show up positive for our family and our colleagues. That means that we can show up in all these other areas in our life in a way that we're really complete and we're giving our best. And this whole process that we're doing isn't just about one thing. It's holistic, and that's why we need to look at it. Is what you do here is going to impact what's over there. What you do physically is going to impact you mentally and emotionally, and give yourself some space to learn how you respond in these areas. Because if you can actually take some time to be still and reflect, and this is where all my yoga practice comes into play, is that when you can put yourself in a place where you can just take some moments to reflect on what's important to you and why you're doing all of this. What is your why is probably one of the most critical things to start with, because that'll give you the structure in which to move forward and give you the filters, so to speak, in terms of how to address all these things that show up. Because if you show up and you get to day 4 and you're going ready to chuck the towel in, and you come back to your why you're doing this, then you will be empowered to move through the blocks that show up, because they're going to happen. Nothing is a smooth ride. We're not on this earth to be sailing on smooth waters. There's always going to be a new storm that shows up. There's always going to be that other thing that puts us into a compromising situation. Let's stop pretending that it's not going to happen, and let's embrace
Yes.
it, and then empower
Yes.
ourselves to we're prepared for when that happens. What's going to happen? I'm going to come back to reflecting on why I'm doing this and what's important for me. And then that'll give you the power to move through the obstacles. And they're going to happen, so be prepared for them. And
Yeah.
this is a holistic thing. It's all about your whole life. It's not about just like breaking it down into segments. It really will be reflective on what you do here is how you do things in other places. So
Yeah.
it's really and it's a great transformational program or process to put you through.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, you're right, and I think I certainly can say that I think everybody who's gone through the process, has not just benefited in how they feel from having more vitality and motivation and energy, but
Mm.
it has then given them, they've been able to apply that into areas of their life that you could go and pursue. Like I remember there was one lady who, you know, during the course of the program, actually the 28-day challenge itself, she wanted to discovered that actually what she was truly passionate about was writing a book, but she just never had this energy to go and do it. And all of a
Wow.
sudden she started to go do it, which was
Yeah.
just remarkable. But so one thing I just want to finish on, Campbell, is just because it can be very difficult for people to start on the basics of removing sugar. Let's just go to 2 things: sugar and
Mm.
alcohol out of our diet.
Mm.
And
Mm.
certainly, I would say to anybody, if this is your first time trying to do both, focus on
Mm.
one to
Mm.
start with. But
Mm.
is there, like, based on what you've discovered and the amount of experience you've had in this area,
Mm.
what are some of the key things you'd say are important to take into consideration in the first few days when you are doing that?
Is like anything, we're addicted to these things, and
Mm,
you can pretend any other way, but ultimately as soon as you take something away, there's this pull to have it and to just be patient with yourself. And this is all part of what we're just talking about in the last section. Is really what you want to do is take care of the little steps along the way. Reflect on what you did in that day, set an intention for the next day. You can journal all of this, which helps. It's a really powerful process. But I would, firstly, it starts with what you put in the pantry. And if you can go to the shops
Mm-hmm.
and put in the trolley the things that you know are going to be more beneficial, just
Mm-hmm.
take the sugars, go through your cupboard, do an audit of all the sugars, and literally bin it, bin it.
It can be
And
shocking,
because
can't it? I remember the first time I
it's,
started going through it, I was really surprised, especially the sugar thing. Like,
yeah,
I was really
yeah,
surprised to discover the sugar in all the sauces.
the
And I
sauces,
was
yeah,
like, wow, it's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, look, it is. And, we are addicted to this stuff because it's
Yes.
highly addictive and it's in everything. I'm sorry, you go to Thai food, it's all through your Thai food. If you go to
That's
your
the bad
Indian
news.
food, it's all through your Indian. Like, you really have to be aware that it's in all the rich sauces that you love and all of the
Yeah.
things that you think, nah, I can't be in that. But,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Well, just
again,
look, just on the pleasure thing, given that you did bring it up about,
yeah,
what it feels like when you first got to take things out. So, one of the things that I've been doing a lot of research in, and I'm now certified in the neuroscience aspect of resilience. And
great.
one of the key drivers in the brain, like one of the core needs, is to avoid pain or seek pleasure. So, one of
Hmm.
the strategies that I've certainly deployed is, if you are ever going to take anything out of existence that you're addicted to because it gives you pleasure, you've got to find an equal replacement that gives you just as much satisfaction and pleasure. So, for
100%.
example, and I'm interested to hear what that one of those things might be for you, Campbell. So, for me, when I got started and I struggled, I realized, oh, I've got to replace it with something that gives me just as much satisfaction, but it
Mm,
wasn't alcohol. Because funny enough, when I took out sugar, I was like, oh, what else? Oh, a glass of wine? Oh, no, can't have that.
yeah,
Can't go to the pub? Okay.
yeah,
So I went for massage. Now, that
great.
worked for me before COVID, clearly,
Mm,
because
mm,
right now I couldn't go do that. But thankfully at the moment, my integrative physician is open. He does, acupuncture and,
mm.
kinesiology. So for me, I'd said, well, that's a reward for me. So if I can't have the sugar, if I go 5 days without the sugar, I will treat myself to having an acupuncture session. So
Mm.
in your, what are some of the things that you could see would be a great replacement that bring you just as much joy or addiction or satisfaction that might work?
I mean, for me, it's exercise,
Right.
movement, but that's not all practical. You can't just go and do that any moment. And even the massage, as beautiful that is for as a self-love practice, I think we want to find, as there's so many things now. I mean, when I was a teenager and I was doing the Candida diet, I'd have to take to school a Tupperware container with cut carrot and celery and hummus and this black bread that was like a brick. And I swear, I just get teased at school all the time, and I'd be like, "Not again, Mum." But the
Oh,
thing is now is there's so many options, there's so many alternatives, and I think it's
yeah.
just taking the patience to look, and you can
Well, yeah,
find
actually, that's a good idea.
lots of really good. There's so many little supplement things that you can have. I mean, right now, the ketone is actually the treat for me, and that's got a stevia in it, so it's not a sugar
Right.
source. It doesn't change the uh, the glucose index, and so you can actually find a little bit of satisfaction in having one of those a day. And there's lots of different flavors, so it tastes really good. The other thing would be, I guess, just like yourself, like going and getting a massage, or just go, I guess, distracting myself with
Yeah.
having other
Phone a
activities
friend.
that I can do, having a friend. Yeah,
Phone a friend. Phone a friend.
yeah,
Go have a
phone a
bath.
friend.
Read a book.
Yeah, that's it.
Listen to a
Yeah.
great podcast like this one.
Yes, I think that's it. Look, there's so many things. I think finding some substitutes, go to the health food store, go and talk to people, look it up online. You'll find things that'll really help. And that's the key, is just having all those backup options ready on standby, so that you're not left sitting there going, oh, I'm just going to have that
Mm,
biscuit.
mm.
I'm just going to have that,
Yes.
sweet thing now, because you
Yeah.
haven't prepared. So preparation is the key, like anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's really great. And I think we might leave it there for today. I think there was so many incredible things that we've talked about, great tips, great pieces of information. So what we'll do is in the show notes and also in the post below, we'll put some links to various resources that we've been talking about to help people better understand those things, and to also be able to reach out to you if they're interested in more information. What I would certainly love to do over the next month, Campbell, is there may be specific areas where it pertains to certain areas of health. We might come back and have another chat. Would you be interested?
Oh, I'd love to. It's my
Oh, good.
passion. I
Yeah,
love it.
great.
And, and anything I can do to support people on that journey is it fills up my heart, and I love it. So yeah, please, I'd love to join you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Kylie.